What up? It is Bones, the Lord of the Underground, and we've had a pretty good week, pretty long week, and we have had some great reveals from McFarlane, also some not so great stuff. Now, this is going to be pretty simple, but also probably going to hurt a little bit. But let's get into this conversation. First, let's go ahead and talk about repaints. McFarlane showed off some more Jokerized versions. He showed a different alternate version of Ledger's Joker with a darker color scheme. And he also showed off a Jokerized version of the Bale Batman. Now, this one we actually knew was coming because we had heard that there was going to be various Jokerized versions a couple months back. Now, these are actually not necessarily must-have figures. Of course, if you are a disgusting completist the way I am, then you are going to pick these up. But another thing I've been accused of recently is being a shill. Now, I don't know how actually looking at things in a positive light and still having my criticisms, but keeping it a little bit more lighter of a feel is being a shill. Now, first off, I think that our definition of a shill is actually a little bit construed, and that is because me having a wrestling background, there's like certain terms that we use that the normal folk wouldn't really know what it is. I'll give you one little example. That is a gig. And when you make a gig, you actually could hide this either in your trunks or maybe like in your wrist tape. And this is something we use to actually, cut ourselves, which is part, of the show of wrestling. But this is a term that you won't really hear a lot. But another term that we actually use is a shill. Now, for us, a shill is more of a paid actor, which would mean that somebody planted in the crowd and is actually paid by the promoter or is doing work for the promoter and is there to like hype somebody up or randomly get involved somehow in the wrestling, but he's really working with us or with the promoter, and to us that's a shill. He's like a plant, in other words. But when I kind of use the word shill, I kind of mean it in a more like spread out, general term. I don't necessarily specify what kind of a shill or like who I'm talking about, because you could be a shill for money, you could be a shill for a company, you could be actually a shill for views, where that's like all you think about, and you'll like die trying to get more views. But it all comes back to that we all have reasons why we do what we do. But I think that if you're being honest and you're, speaking what you really feel, then there's not really any shill in you. And that is regardless if you have more of a negative, outlook or if you have a positive outlook. I mean, we all see things differently and, there's nothing wrong with that. Now, if I was a real shill, there would actually be no way that I would say this statement, which is the repainted, the Jokerized versions, don't buy them. Because, if McFarlane was giving me something, or if I really was, simping that hard for McFarlane, I would tell you guys, buy it. It's a must buy. This is the only time you're going to get these Joker cards with your figure. And that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that if it's interesting to you, or if you wanted to add it to your collection, then by all means go ahead. If you don't want it, or it doesn't interest you, or you're kind of tired of the repaints, move on. No one's gonna force you to buy it. No one's gonna think differently of you if you don't buy it, and it's not for you. That's all there is to it. Now, I have heard some people say like, oh, but they're wasting this like effort with packaging and all that when they could be doing another figure. They're gonna do what they're gonna do, and the way the figures sell is the way they'll keep doing it. Haven't really seen any animated McFarlane figures coming out anytime soon. I wonder why. I did say last time that those probably sold the least number by unit of figures, in the whole McFarlane line, and we have not seen any of those since then. Now, who knows if out of the blue he'll release some other ones, but for right now, those have basically stopped showing up. Now, as far as the repaints go, it's another thing, like I just said, it's kind of funny. People can't just move on if they're not interested in something. Like McFarlane just showed those images or put up the pre-orders for the black and white Spawn with Throne, and sold out. Just like that, sold out. They're done, they're gone. And that goes for the green version also of Spawn, it's gone. And now if you like have second thoughts and you want to pick one up in the aftermarket, well, you're gonna pay. Now me, I'm not really a completist of Spawn figures. Now I've been this way since McFarlane started making figures. I do have a lot of older McFarlane stuff, but I don't have every figure because I was never really a completist the way I was with DC figures. So that has, rolled on into this phase of my collecting where I'm a completist in DC Multiverse, but I'm not really a completist in Spawn or McFarlane. Although I do have a lot of them, I'm just waiting, to actually have more room to display those Spawn figures. Right now I'm more concentrated on my DC stuff. I do have a pretty nice little tucked away collection of Spawn figures. And this just goes to show you, if it's not for you and you don't want to buy it, there's people out there that actually want it. And this is proven by the fact of the way it sells out. So, you're just basically wasting your energy complaining about it because it's not for you. You're not going to buy it. Let people who want that add it to their collection. So basically, in the end, you could just think of it like this. A lot of worms, they see the pre-orders go up for these figures, for these repaints, and basically they're like, we don't want your repainted crap, Todd. Like, we're tired of the repaints. They proceed to sell out. So don't worry about it. It's not affecting you. So, just let it go and squirm, somewhere else. Speaking of squirming, if you go into the comment sections of the reveals for a lot of DC stuff, even McFarlane Spawn stuff, there they are. They crawl out of the woodworks, and I got like a couple of, ways to look at this, and that is that they're always gonna be there. Like, there's just people that are gonna hate like forever, and there's nothing you could change about it. I think a lot of their reasoning is kind of validated because they do have like some negative things to say that maybe McFarlane could like do a little better or add a little bit more paint. Those are mostly the complaints that I hear, is like the no paint or the scale, which is something subjective, because people that are not really into comics and are just going down the toy aisle are not really going to worry about scale. That's a more of a concern for collectors that are really looking at that. But it is interesting to see, like, now it's becoming more frequent that they go in there and start putting their comments and they turn around and get, basically bitch slapped right there in the comment section. So it is what it is. I don't think McFarlane is really losing any sleep over, negative comments. Hopefully he is taking into consideration people's constructive criticisms, because we do need that. It's just, I don't think you should be so disrespectful and like poke fun at the line while you're trying to, get your point across. But that's just me. People are allowed to do whatever they want, and people are allowed to still make McFarlane's releases sell out. So it is what it is. Speaking of selling out, how about those Blue Beetle Jaime Reyes movie figures? Same thing. I heard a lot of little complaints about the arms being too long, or how come you made two different versions instead of one pack with like all the accessories. Basically the same redundant complaints. They did sell out. It's sold out completely on all sites. That just teaches you, that you might not like something, but there are people that enjoy it. And if it's not for you, I don't see why you go into another space and add your negativity. But you're allowed to. It's a free country. Do what you want. I kind of decide a lot of times to not even like acknowledge them, because that kind of gives them more fuel, and then they start saying that, you're ass kissing McFarlane, or you're shilling for McFarlane. So it's better just not get into the weeds with them, because you're not gonna win. I would say just stay positive and collect what you like, and that's really all that matters. Connect with people that have the same mindset as you, and you'll be a happy collector. Now, right after that, McFarlane released images of the gold label Ted Cord Blue Beetle. Now, this reveal was not really that good for me, because I kind of knew that there was like a rumor that they were going to release another Blue Beetle Ted Cord figure, but I had my fingers crossed that they would give him clear goggles, because I pretty much guarantee if McFarlane would have given him clear goggles, probably this figure would be more sought after right now, and probably would already be sold out on the Target website. But no, they just gave him a new design and shape of the goggles. I think it's more of a classic, old school look instead of the round ones from the original release. But the good thing is you do get some alternate hands, and what looks to be like a pretty cool little beetle communicator or something like that. But as but as I said, I think if they would have made him clear goggles, this would just really be a home run out of the park. But sadly, no. Now it's going to be just, if you want a different, slightly different version, pick it up. If not, not for you. But man, I really think McFarlane needs some sort of consultant that like has an ear of what the fans really want, and has a knowledge of the comics and the history, and can actually tell him, like they want to decide to put a certain belt, and the consultant could be like, no, that's not accurate. The fans are going to really not like that, and that could be a big, tipping point of if it sells more or not. Sure, everybody would wish that they would take a little bit more, care, and have a little bit more attention to detail. And that moves us into one of the pretty much worst reveals that we saw, and that was the Superman Ultraman 2-pack. Now this one really does have some cons and pros, and I think the cons are really the butt ugly head sculpts on both of these figures. I mean, I even tried to hunt down like some sort of reference, some sort of source material that it could kind of justify these head sculpts. And I mean, the smiling derpy looking one kind of looks maybe like this, but not really. And then the other evil, looking version kind of looks like this version of Ultraman. But I was kind of happy with just the old Ultraman head. Now, I just recently did a custom alternate head where you could see his eyes, and I really wish they either would have went that way or just picked one comic version of Ultraman and really tried to recreate that, vision, because there's a lot of cool versions of Ultraman. And yes, he is like an angry character, but once again, they just dropped the ball. Now, what are the pros? The pros is we are getting a little small Atomica figure. Now, this is a newer version. There actually was an older, already a Hispanic version of Atomica, and now they moved it onto this new version of her, more, recent in the comics. But, we could actually get a full-scale figure of her that would actually go with this little one. So that would be kind of cool. And another good thing is you get tons of hands with this package. Tons of Superman hands. I don't know if they'll swap on either Ultraman and Superman, but you got a lot of hands in this package. So besides that, the wreckage of the Daily Planet is another cool little base, that probably one of the better bases. And of course you can, switch and swap these bases and accessories and hands with all other McFarlane figures. So one of the reveals that's really getting pounded online right now, but I will be picking it up, of course. Now, up next, we did have the Doomsday 2-pack on Target with Doomsday and Superman. Now, we had heard this one was coming out, but we had to see the images of it. Now, some of the complaints are kind of justifiable. I would say no fist with the Superman is really like inexcusable by McFarlane at this point. I don't know who thought that the flying hands and the grasping hands were the way to go. But once again, as I said, consultant. Please get a consultant that could make these final little details for you to please the fans just a little bit more. In all actuality, you can. This is basically the Hush figure, just with a little bit of scrapes and scratches that are like battle damage. Now, I'm not sure if it's because it's a retail line, so they don't really want to like bloodied up, half naked Superman on the pegs. Battle damage on this guy is really minimal. He has some blood like all over his boots, which is kind of like a weird little detail. And of course the tattered cape with no yellow S on the back. Now, the yellow S on the back is an iconic image. They even show it in the little preview video that they did for McFarlane's YouTube channel, predominantly shown in the video, and they did not put the yellow S on the cape. This is what I'm talking about the small details that do matter, and that would make a big difference. It's still gonna sell, but that's just, that little negative thing that people harp on. And I'm just really getting tired of that. You can get the two fists from the Hush figure, but you really shouldn't have to. What if you don't have the Hush figure and you really want Superman to be throwing blows with Doomsday? Now, that's not it. The other thing is Doomsday does have some reused parts from the Devastator figure. Now, I'm pretty sure these decisions were made due to keeping the price, at $60. And that's what, all companies do, is sometimes they make choices to keep the figure at the price that they want. Now, this did bring up some really dumb complaints from people, and that was basically like that he has a ponytail, and when does he have a ponytail? Well, I'm going to tell you, all the releases before, well, not all, but most of them, which was like the DC Superheroes Doomsday had a ponytail, the Mattel big size Doomsday had a ponytail, and that was basically your, quintessential Doomsday that everybody loves, and it was a really expensive figure, I think around $200, and nobody ever complained about it until now. Now all of a sudden it's a big deal that he has a ponytail. I'm not sure why. Instead of saying that it's cool that McFarlane added the articulated jaw, they're complaining about the ponytail. Another thing they were complaining about was that he has boots. Pretty much all the versions I've ever seen, he has boots, and like the tattered remains of that containment suit that he has when he first appears. So I don't know if people just don't know this, or they don't realize what taking artistic liberties with a character are, but it is an awesome looking Doomsday. He scales out really well. People are talking about the scale as well, and when they released that old DC Universe Classics one, nobody had a problem with the scale, even though they are basically scaled out the same way as this version is. So it's just, I think sometimes people complain to complain and they'll never be satisfied. Their fanboy fantasies will never be completely quenched, and we just have to live with it. Now, I personally am probably going to use the Superman that came with the Devastator 2-pack. I just feel he has a better look to him, and I'm going to have some fun, taking photos. Of course, I did pre-order my 2-pack, and even the base that comes with that, it has like a hole, and I think that hole was planned to like put the pole through and then hang the cape on there. They just didn't do it with that Devastator 2-pack. And ironically, with this 2-pack, you're not getting any bases, so maybe that base will finally come into use. Now we're going to get into the finally revealed collector series. Now, we didn't know originally what these were going to be. A lot of people got their hopes up and were thinking that these were going to be the ultimate, in collector figures. And I remember actually telling everybody, like, hold your horses, don't get too excited. We know that sometimes McFarlane is, the king of the letdowns. But we still have yet to see. We did see the reveals, but we do not know exactly what they will come with or any of the packaging or anything like that. Now, first up was the first appearance of Superman. Now, this goes back to the old Action Comics where Superman originally appeared. Now, people were already complaining about the color design and everything like that. And it is true that there are two versions of Superman in the first comic. You have the cover version where he has red boots and red trunks. And then you have the inside version where he actually has blue boots and more of a blue scheme completely to the costume. So, it's never going to be 100% accurate with McFarlane. There's always going to be those little details. You always get people making fun of the face sculpts. Even if they're perfect or even if they're, good, you'll always have people making fun of it for, obvious reasons. McFarlane has put out some duds, but he's also done some awesome head sculpts that are just immaculate and exemplary. So, pretty crazy. We don't know if he's going to come with alternate hands or an awesome, base or what. So, let's hold on. Now, the second figure is going to be the original Green Lantern, Alan Scott. Now, the original Green Lantern, Alan Scott. Now, the thing I remember about this is when that Dread Lantern figure was shown. Oh my God, you could have filled up cups of tears of the worms crying out there that why couldn't we get a classic one? What is this death metal crap? And the same stuff, not knowing that you wouldn't even have to wait a month and you would see the classic version that you're crying about. So all your little tears were for nothing. We all knew the classic version was coming. And this takes us back to the same thing. If you don't want that dark multiverse version, don't buy it. Wait for this classic Alan Scott. Now, one thing I do hope is, like I said before, if we get a lantern with him, maybe some effects, I would love to get at least 4 pairs of hands, 2 grasping hands, and 2 fists. Please, this should be mandatory for all figures by now. I'm tired of getting a figure that can only hold the lantern in one hand and also a figure that cannot get into your classic superhero pose with the double fist. Please give these figures some extra hands. Now, we do have high hopes because we've been seeing more hands coming out in recent figures, but like I said, this might be a big letdown once we actually see the full reveal. Now, the final reveal for this wave will be Abyss. Now, interesting thing is that it does fit because it is like the first appearance of this character. It is based on the first appearance of Abyss, but it's really a character that a lot of people do not recognize. Now, this is kind of like that Ghostmaker effect, and that is that people don't know it, but it's an awesome looking figure, cool sculpt, cool design, and people could like embrace it or not not be having it and just skip it. So it's up to you. It's kind of weird. It's kind of like DC Comics is still making comics right now, and they're trying to push their newer characters to get exposure, and people are just, stuck in that old classic figures that they want, the old versions of all the characters, while DC is actually trying to move forward with newer things. I'd be surprised to see how people would react to a Punchline figure because she's a newer character. She's not really that old, but what are people going to say? Oh, who's that? That's not Harley Quinn. Or are people going to be like, yes, we wanted a Punchline figure? It just, that's what's funny about it is that why don't we accept the new things and appreciate when we get classic things and just let the line go as it's going to go? No, we got to cry. We got to whimper, and we want to go home and cry to mama. Now, this figure is a complete original new sculpt, so I wouldn't expect too much in the accessories, but like I said before, I am hoping for the scythe and at least a pair of alternate hands. Please give us 2 grasping hands and 2 fists. Now, I know that they didn't spend a lot of money on the first 2 figures. That was a lot of reuse. The Superman is from the same Infected Superman book. I mean, we haven't seen the legs, but we could pretty much bet on it, which is kind of like a more muscular physique than I would think when I think of the original Superman image. And of course, the lantern is reuse of the Dread Lantern, so I mean, they didn't spend a lot of money there. So a lot of that scope money went into this Abyss figure. But please at least give us some alternate hands. Now, another argument that the figure police out there that are, always giving their opinions of what characters are chosen, another argument they always have is, why don't you release all the classic figures first before you get into this weird stuff? And it's like they don't know how, toy lines work. You must maintain interest in the toy line. If you release basically, everything everybody's clamoring for or everything everybody expects in the first, years, when the years go on, people will just lose interest because there will never be, anticipation of a classic. Like, let's just say in 2 years, they give us a Mr. Miracle or a Big Barda or maybe even a Hawk Girl. You have to wait and keep the line interesting. You can't just shoot it all at once. But one thing that I kind of do feel like at my core, and this is that, a lot of people think I don't want this, but I kind of feel like we're ready for it. It's coming up. I kind of feel it, We're going to get our classic Wonder Woman. It's coming. I'm pretty sure. Before year's end, we will have a classic Wonder Woman. But anyways, guys, I'll be looking forward to more reveals. Forward to taking a look at newer figures. You guys keep hunting out there. Keep collecting. Keep customizing. And I will see you on the next one.
They used to call me Crazy Joe, but now they can call me Batman.